Yeah.
Well, anyway, so I'm watching all these shows, and everybody is doing the same. They're talking from the same sheet. It's just so obvious. They all say the same things. They all do the same. The worst, of course, is Fox.
Yeah,
because they go over the top with many people on Fox, literally saying torture's good. I think these people deserve to be tortured, including those poor 26 people that were in the group that had nothing to do with anything, and they were just tortured anyway. But they went on. I do have a Fox. It's kind of long, but it's worth listening to. This is a Fox medley because I couldn't get. This is part of the 60 clips. I couldn't put. I just took little chunks from every one of these millions of clips from Fox.
A Fox medley,
bloodthirsty bastards.
Now, did you mix some house music to this medley?
No, if I had more time, I would have.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah, hit it.
Is it useful? Was it effective to use torture?
Well, to start with, I would just
stop.
Oh, sorry.
I did start off with the news hour. It's all the same. These people are all in, and this is they have a person, and then they have somebody responding. Usually a CIA guy.
And there were a couple. I mean, there were a lot of guys who came out who I hadn't seen either in a long time or ever. They were all out on the circuit. It was pretty fun to watch.
Is it useful? Was it effective to use torture?
Well, to start with, I would disagree with the term torture. But the enhanced interrogation program that we utilized on a handful of top terrorists absolutely, beyond any doubt, produced vital intelligence that helped keep America safe.
Give me an example.
Osama bin Laden.
Well, this makes no sense to me whatsoever, Megan. We're a nation at war. Look at why would we release it now? What did we have to gain? All of this has been debated. All of this has been settled. We understood all of that.
That it will put Americans here and abroad at risk. Here he is.
And tonight, Fox News confirming that the FBI and Homeland Security have sent a joint warning to law enforcement that the Senate report could in fact spark violence. Megan. On the allegation the CIA program was not effective, a former CIA officer with firsthand knowledge of the interrogations says 9/11 architect Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, one of 3 detainees waterboarded by the CIA, generated 2,000 intelligence reports.
Tonight, Americans at home and abroad are at greater risk than they were 24 hours ago. Tonight, Americans at home and abroad are at greater risk than they were 24 hours ago.
Our next guest says the release of this report amounts to nothing less than providing aid and comfort to the enemy in wartime. Fox News strategic analyst Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters is with me. Your reaction to all this, sir?
Disgust.
Same
disgust here. And more disgust. And you know, Sean, the very people that are flagellating the CIA today for doing what they approved it to do are going to be the first ones to cry intelligence failure when there's another attack. I mean, it's a messy world.
I think the enhanced interrogation techniques, I think they serve their purpose. I think they made us safer. ISIS is beheading Americans. What's worse, that or Khalid Sheikh Mohammed getting some water splashed on his face, or someone else getting slapped, or hearing loud music, or kept awake for 100 hours.
Loud music and awake for 3 days. It's called law school, preparing for the bar activity. Everything they did was sanctioned and put together in reports. There was no criminal prosecution from this. Do you understand that? It's now looking after and years and saying, you know, we don't like what you did. Well, why didn't you, any of the senators who were on this intelligence committee and were privy to this information, why didn't you object then, and why are you doing it now?
It goes on and on and on with the same memes and the same and it's on all the channels we're doing.
But let's just state for a fact what has come out of this. It gives me no more pleasure than to hear the words rectal feeding and rectal hydration. I really, really think that is the funniest thing.
Did you get they actually had the recipe that went into the rectal feeding? Did you see that?
I mean, how come you
ground hummus, salad, kale,
which they call sloshing up? I mean, this report,
disgusting.
It was so funny to me that you know, anal water torture has been applied for centuries probably, but yet we have in our politically correct world. And I think it was actually rectal rehydration, which makes it even funnier than rectal hydration. Okay, so I have had a back and forth with Uncle Don. And I have been upgraded in Uncle Don's world.
Okay.
Yes.
By the way, I did have questions that I should have given to you to ask Uncle Don, which is, what does he think
Well, I have. Yes.
Of Hayden and Rodriguez.
Well, so first I'll give you his. The first thing he said is new subject. Being referred to as Uncle Don reminds me of a children's radio program of my early youth by that name. I'm very proud to be your uncle, but let's just drop the uncle bit. Now, I call this an upgrade. I think he's taking me serious now.
Yeah. It's too late.
So I did not ask him specifically about. You want to hear what his general thoughts are?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So for those of you who are new to the program, look up Donald Gregg, and you'll see why he speaks of some authority. And it is my belief that he is such a good guy these days, certainly, that he would. That's why he's not asked on any mainstream media programming, because he actually speaks the truth. Certainly when it comes to North Korea. So he says the central question in this case, funny how he used a lot of these memes we're always catching, that is not being dealt with. That question is, why was the CIA told to do what it was told to do, and who told them? That brings into focus people like the miserable Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, the lawyers like John Yoo, who fell over themselves legitimizing enhanced interrogation, giving legal cover to what CIA did. And by the way, whenever a guy's really in the CIA, they never say the CIA. You notice that? So
I notice it now.
Yeah, so he says giving legal cover to what CIA did. The central,
like Ukraine.
Yes. The central and most painful part of this is that Bush 43 and Cheney, having failed to prevent 9/11 in the first place, lost faith in our ability to deal traditionally with the crisis they had largely caused themselves. That's the real rub of the issue. I think Obama wants to avoid that central point, but I think it's going to be hard for him to do. What do you think? He says.
Well, he didn't throw in all the classic memes that they're using, which is we're now in more danger than we were before. Our lives are at risk because of this report.
Oh, because I think he probably thinks that's bullcrap. That's not important.
I'm sure he does. Most people seem that know anything think it's bullcrap, but they're pushing it like there's no tomorrow. And what's funny is that there's a number of self-contradictions in all of their own debates. I honestly don't believe it was the top PR guys at CIA that put the talking points together. I think it was a public relations group put together by Hayden, Goss,
yes. Definitely Hayden,
and Tenet.
Do you want to?
The three of them wrote that op-ed in the New York Times, which, if you read that op-ed, the talking points are all in there.
Right.
And the main one they keep pushing is, it did help, it did work, it did help, it did work. And they just keep saying it over and over. And so all the stooges that came in from, which is most of the people in the mainstream media, with the exception of two people I can identify, there may be more. Mm-hmm. And I never heard what Rachel had to say, so I don't know about her.
I didn't.
But I'll tell you, the other lesbian, Hayes, yes. Christopher Hayes, that guy.
Now, why do you resort to name calling? This discredits the entire program.
It's a joke from the correspondence dinner. I give him full credit. He was not on board with the talking points.
Oh, really?
At all. Huh. In fact, I'm sure they're calling him.
Wow. Okay.
Talking to him to get him on board, because he was brutal. And he had the best guy on. He had Colonel Wilkerson on. Okay, let's move right to that.
Yeah, all right, get to it.
Let's go to Colonel Wilkerson. Colonel Wilkerson was Colin Powell's chief of staff,
right,
during this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And Wilkerson comes on as a guest, and he's not the normal Richard Engel coming on to apologize and say, well, it's unknowable. He uses the unknowable meme and all the rest of it. Everybody on all these channels. Let me just do one little quickie before that. There was one guy, that's why I had to rush to get the, this is actually kind of funny. He took over one of the shows. This guy, Ari Melber, A-R-I Melber. Ari Melber was never obviously read in or paid off or bought off, and he was a fly in MSNBC's ointment because he was a substitute, and they didn't know. I guess nobody knew that he wasn't.
Oh yeah, no, I saw this guy Ari. Ari is his name.
Yeah,
Ari. Right. The nice looking Jewish boy. Ari.
Yeah, here he is.
Yeah, I've seen it. I saw this. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay, here he is jumping in on something that he shouldn't have said anything, but he jumps in, and this is the clip. Is the one guy on MSNBC.
Question here going forward is, what is the role of the CIA?
I'm sorry. Am I playing the right one?
The one guy in MSNBC.
Well, there's no actual clip called One Guy. There's
the one
interrupts.
Guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you got to help me out with that, man. All right, here we go.
Sometimes in a time of war, you have to go out and do things that you wouldn't normally think were appropriate or right. But if they're going to protect you,
sometimes in the war you do war crimes. I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about war crimes under the Geneva Convention.
Well, but I think that they believe that they were justified because of the circumstances of the time. That is the argument they're making, and I think that's where this really is breaking down. Now, I do think most Republicans, at least publicly, right now.
In fact, there was a roundtable discussion, and Ari, I think it was Ari's show, and Toure was on. You know, the music course.
Toure is all in with the memes
but he was. They had they're going to commercial break, and they have one of those shots where you see the whole group, and he's rolling his eyes, going, "This Ari. Ari didn't read his memo."
Yeah, Ari apparently didn't read his memo because he was adamant about the report. He read more than there were talking points given.
You know what's next for Ari? Podcasting.
Probably, poor bastard. He's out.
Boy.
So anyway, we have Chris Hayes, who obviously he was never on it, because it was funny to watch the show before his, and they're all, well, you know, it was the time of the changing times, and it was 9/11 era, and we had to do what we had to do, and if it wasn't for this, we wouldn't have caught bin Laden, which, by the way, was 10 years after.
Yeah.
And it was also 4 years, three to 4 years after they stopped doing this interrogation. And then they catch bin Laden, and yeah, sure. So the bin Laden thing is bull crap. But let's listen to Wilkerson, who comes on to discuss this with Chris Hayes.
Joining me now, retired U.S. Army Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. He was Chief of Staff for Secretary of State Colin Powell from 2002 to 2005. Your reaction to the reaction today, do you feel as if we've made progress as a nation in reckoning with this period, or are we back where we were 10 years ago?
I think the latter, Chris, because I don't think, even though this might bring a modicum of accountability to some of the people at the top, some of the people you've named, I don't think anything really will be done. So whatever punitive effect there is to it will be whitewashed, will not be accomplished. And as for lying, let me tell you, I've been watching it all day, Chris. I've been watching people like Phil Mudd and John McLaughlin, whom I spent so much time with I grew sick of them, getting Powell ready for his presentation at the United Nations. Phil Mudd, I remember him coming into the Waldorf Astoria hotel room where at 2 a.m. in the morning of that morning, 5 February, I was taking things out of Powell's presentation that connected al-Qaeda with Baghdad. And Phil was frantic trying to get it stuck back in, and even went and woke George Tenet up in his hotel and tried to get George Tenet to make me stop doing it. And then to hear Phil Mudd come on TV and talk about so calmly how competent and how wonderful this program was and how it worked and so forth, it almost made me sick to listen to that going on. These people lied in my presence. They lied to Condi Rice. They lied to Steve Hadley, Condi's deputy at the time. They lied to Rich Armitage, Powell's deputy. They lied to me. People like George Tenet, John McLaughlin, they lied about the mobile biological labs. They lied about connections with al-Qaeda. So for them to sit there and say that they didn't lie to the Senate Select Committee or to the House Committee, it's absolutely absurd.
Yeah, he's. This is the only guy on any of the shows I've seen that was there and not working for the agency or Cheney. And by the way, Wilkerson blames the whole thing. He says Cheney was the only one at the top that knew anything. But let's go to he does have a positive thing to say about the CIA, because there is a meme going on. Oh, this is a beating up, flagellating the CIA. But he has a kind of a different take on it, which I believe is a little more logical. And this is the Wilkerson 2
A recommendation, John? Recommendation. I want us both to try saying CIA instead of the CIA.
Yeah, no, I know.
No.
I don't work for this. I can't put it that one.
Wow. You went right down the trap. You went from the CIA to, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm just shut up.
Yeah, shut up.
Believe the CIA when the CIA says this is one-sided, this is bunk, don't listen to this.
This is another disservice to the agency, Chris. There are a lot of good people at the agency. There are just as many people. I would submit if you could do a survey, there would be more people who are anxious to see the agency's name and these people who've done these sorts of things cleared out, anxious to see some sort of accountability, anxious to get their hands clean, to get the agency's hands cleaned and to get on with business, to do the things that the CIA should do in the way that they should do them in conformance with the law when and if possible. This is not an agency that is out there, cowering in the dark, wondering, as McLaughlin and Tenet and others have said, if it has a future. This is a group of people who would like to do their duty to their country and to their mission, and they'd like to get this stuff off their hands.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Which is what Don wants. He said, let's rip the Band-Aid off, get the Panetta report out, which is the CIA's version of this. Get that out, redact, what you have to, but minimal. And do it, and just get over it and move on.
I don't have a clip of this, but the redactions of the Feinstein report are apparently ludicrous, according to Jay Rockefeller. He says that he saw the unredacted versions. There's stuff that was taken out, including fake names. They were protecting names, so they actually put fake names in the report to protect names, and they redacted those.
Well, yeah,
and a bunch, just a lot of dumb stuff.
We have less than 600 pages from 6,000, so I'd call that a 90% redaction right there.
Right. Well, one of the senators believes that the whole report will eventually be released. Of course, in 25 years, it gets declassified. Eventually, it will be, yeah. So Wilkerson, part 3, I thought was the best of the clips.
Internal CIA email from July 2003 noted the White House is extremely concerned Secretary Powell would blow his stack if he were to be briefed on what's been going on. You were working for Secretary Powell at that time. Your reaction to that?
I'm sure that's probably the case. I got to see him. I worked for him over 12 years, and I got to see him blow his stack worse than he'd ever blown it before at the CIA with George Tenet and John McLaughlin, because he sensed what was being done to them. He took me into a room and told me to cut about 25% of the presentation he was supposed to give out. Told me to take it out because it was worthless. He was even worried that it wasn't accurate. And then within a few minutes, George Tenet showed up with the spellbinding news that a high-level al-Qaeda operative had revealed under interrogation, he said, no revealing that he was being tortured at the time, that he had revealed significant contacts between al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein's operatives in Baghdad. This was a flat-out lie. We later learned it was Sheikh al-Libi, that he was being tortured, no U.S. personnel were even present, and that within a week to 10 days he recanted what he'd given under torture. So this is the kind of thing that was happening when I was out at the CIA for 5 days and nights with these people who are now trying to tell the American people that they were competent and they were telling the truth.
Yeah.
I think it summarizes things.
I have a couple things to add to this as you move along. Just wanted to get this is Hayden, who, by the way, has developed a tic.
Yes, somebody mentioned it. I noticed it.
Steck mentioned it, and I went looking, and he's got a twitch in his eye.
He's got blinking eyes, blink.
One eye blinking. This is stress. It is stress. I'm an expert on tics. This is stress, and he's saying a lot of look. I think this is his central argument, and I have something to say about this precisely.
This isn't a response here about defending torture. I'm here talking to you about defending history. What we really could have used is a really non-political look at the CIA program, the one that was launched when this report first got underway. This report was supposed to have conducted interviews, hearings, and give recommendations. It doesn't have any of those. I was in government for 10 years after 9/11, and let me tell you a phrase I never heard from anybody in any position of authority. Whatever you guys do about this terrorism threat, please don't overreact. Never heard it, Brian.
And this is
So what?
Well, but this is really what it comes down to. My view on this is that in general, the general consensus of the American citizen is we don't care.
Oh, I agree.
We don't care. We don't care if you have to shove broomsticks up people's asses, if you're going to rectally rehydrate them. We don't care. We don't care. And we've been trained as big, bad motherfuckers to go out and kill everybody, drone everybody. We don't care. We're a bloodthirsty, and we've been trained that way. We're militaristic. We're trained to kill. And in general, we don't care. And people who are like, whoa, the Democrat bullshit. Everybody here is trained to kill.
No, I don't think. I actually, the only one, there's one person that brought it up and then the guy backed off. Some guy wrote a book. He's semi-critical on hardball. Chris Matthews has this guy on hardball, and he uses and Matthews is the only guy, because I've been waiting for somebody to say if it's sadism, because that's what I always believed this was really all about. You had a bunch of sadists and their opportunity. I mean, you see guys like Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. I mean, he looks like a guy you don't really want to ever meet or know. And
now tell us who Rodriguez is.
Rodriguez was the head of covert operations under Hayden, and he was one of the guys that was running the torture program. And he is usually doing a double bit with Hayden, floating around, defending everything they did out of fear. There's two fears. One, which is, I think, unwarranted, which is that the United States will file charges against them because Hayden in particular lied and lied and lied and lied. And when he brought with the clip you had, the original, he's right. The original investigation was going to be a bunch of interviews and some other things, but it turned out that the people that were going to be interviewed were lying constantly. They were intimidating the staff. They were spying on them. Staff.
Yeah.
What?
They were spying on them.
They were spying on them, but they were also intimidating. There were threats. There were death threats. Subtle death threats that came into the office.
It's what we do.
Well, then Feinstein, who doesn't give a crap about this because she knows it's bogus, she said, this is not going to work this way. What we're going to do is get every document we can out of their office. And they took 6 million documents and read every email they could. And there's no reason if somebody in the email says, well, we killed this guy by accident here at this black site, and then they put all the details in there for some unknown reason. They do this, but they did. What are you going to ask the guy? He's just put it on the email. He's got all the information there. You don't need to talk to him after the fact. One of the memes in all this is, they never interviewed anybody. They never interviewed the people who were tortured. What are they going to say? And they never interviewed the torturers. Okay, well, you didn't, but you have 6 million documents to extract this information from. You don't really need to interview anybody. It's kind of like historical.
And here's the thing. What this really does is it destroys and chops down the American exceptionalism, because we're no better than the Japanese, what they've done. We're no better than the Chinese. We're no better than the German Nazis. We're no better we're just people, and we have all of our crazy crap like everybody else, but we have this nice veneer we put over it, and we expect this to end like all of our movies do. Boy gets girl, happily ever after. And it's just, even Don is not seeing, that we just suck like everybody else. We have cooler uniforms. We have.
We should suck less.
Well, I think that's the idea, but we don't.
It's not. We're not going to. Well, we never will if we have all these bloodthirsty a-holes that are on Fox, and even obviously, apparently on MSNBC.
I have something.
Because these guys are just pushing, and I got a thing about this at the end, but let me play a couple more things here that are kind of interesting.
Sure.
Al Sharpton's all in on this, by the way. Even though Sharpton had to kind of tone his down a little bit, but Richard Engel seems to be the point guy for the CIA.
Now, who's Engel again?
Richard Engel, we've talked about him on the show before. We've had clips from him on the show before. He is the foreign correspondent for NBC.
Yes. Okay.
He's the guy's always, and one time, remember, he was doing a report from Paris, and he was busted for doing it where he thought he said one thing and it was someplace else.
Oh, he's a phony.
And he was on all the shows on MSNBC. He was on the first show where he got into a beef with Ira or whatever.
Ari.
Ari.
Yeah.
He got into a beef with Ari on an early show. Then the Roundabout show came on, and then Ari was on that show too, and he got into another beef with Engel. And Engel kept saying the exact same things on every show. He varied it a little bit. Then he shows up on Sharpton, and I assume he showed up on everybody's show except Chris Hayes' show. He didn't show up,
right,
because he had some other guy who was obviously a CIA guy, but he didn't want to battle with Hayes because it was obviously Hayes was on the warpath and he wasn't. Then he just kind of backed off, and so nothing came of that. But here's Engel and Sharpton. This is the kind of rapport you'd have with these guys, and this is the kind of answer you get from a stupid question. The question is a meme question, right from the talking points.
Joining me now is NBC News Chief Foreign Correspondent Richard Engel. Thank you for being here, Richard.
My pleasure. How are you?
Good. Richard, did the CIA go rogue, or was there more to it?
Well, I think in one element, I think the country went rogue.
There's no real conflict.
The country went rogue. Yeah, the country. That's what I'm saying. I agree. The country went rogue.
Well, he didn't. He did it just to kind of push people off of the questioning.
Yeah,
that wasn't the best. I'm sorry, that was not the best talking point.
Can I give you? You're not watching CNN. Do you mind if I play a little CNN intermezzo here?
Play.
This is the report just coming out. Brooke CNN.
Oh, your babe.
Brooke the babe, who they airbrush her so well with the makeup spray paint.
Oh, yeah,
unbelievable. And she has Christiana Anandpur on, and two memes here. One, Putin wouldn't dare put out a report about his torture, right? And then the other one is a familiar one that we've seen recently, and which I believe.
How did they get Putin into this? Now
she's good, man. She is good.
That one.
Yeah, she's good. She's good. She gets Brooke, my girl Brooke on CNN, and Anandpur brings in something that has been lingering around, and we recently discussed one of the cases and what we think this is really all about in international New World Order terms.
Finally, this transparency in this report, and this is something that, say, Vladimir Putin would never, ever do. Is that a possibility?
Well, precisely. I mean, that's the point, that I can't think of another government that has or would do this kind of thing, whether Western democracies over here or obviously dictatorships and authoritarian regimes just wouldn't be doing this. And I think obviously philosophically, morally, ethically, that is a strength of the United States, to confront this massive wrongdoing, to put it out in public, and to try to move forward in a way that corrects that and make sure that doesn't happen. You know, when you think about it, this all goes back to the days after 9/11 when Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld cast out the Geneva Conventions and said, I don't give a you-know-what about the Geneva Conventions. These people are terrorists, and we're going to get them any which way. And to that point, though, what's happened, as your previous guest, Karen Greenberg, said, while this may or may not be strictly illegal in the United States, and you know all the tortured legality that has tried to justify this, it is most definitely a crime under international law. And so my guest, former colonel of the Air Force, the former prosecutor at Guantanamo Bay, said he would advise any Americans named in this investigation or at all tainted by all of this to vacation domestically. I mean, that is, a real worry that they may, be had up under international law for this kind of activity.
Well, two things we learned here is that she may not be compromised like 90% of the other people. That's by what she said, because there's no talking points.
Well, I think she's MI6, if anything.
Yeah, no,
so
I would agree. She may be British, and she's not going to be going for she's not going to be reading somebody else's talking points. The thing about what she said, though, I agree 100%, and that I believe is why Hayden has those tics.
Yeah, because she doesn't want to get arrested.
Yeah, he knows. I mean, it's almost like being a prisoner in the country. Because
it's exactly what it is.
I mean, Cheney's worried about going overseas. Bush doesn't appear to care because he never traveled anyway.
Yeah, staying home.
He stays at this ranch. He doesn't care. It wouldn't bother him in the least if he was indicted in Germany for something.
I found it interesting just to see we had this case with the president of Kenya. The International Criminal Court, although they really don't care to really prosecute anyone, and they've really never prosecuted anyone fully, and as far as I know, no case has actually been won anything.
I thought Milosevic was one.
I think he died prematurely. Didn't he die before they finished?
So. Oh. Well, that's a possibility. That's one way of getting taken care of it. Kill him.
I thought he died. Yeah. Hold on.
Let me look. I'm looking at what you're talking. Go on.
Let me see. Of course, we had a couple of questions for Josh Earnest in the which I like to watch in the press briefings.
He died.
I told you,
2006.
Yeah, he died before they could fully indict him, and he represented himself, and but the whole thing was a farce. So yeah, here is Major Garrett. What's Major is ABC, NBC.
Major Garrett Garrett. I believe he is ABC.
Best disc jockey name ever.
Yeah,
Major Garrett, everybody. We got traffic and weather on the 8th. Everybody, Major Garrett in the morning. Asking, of course, about the political timing of this report.
Josh, over the weekend, Senate Democrats spent a good deal of time talking among themselves about whether this was the right time to release that report. And there are many who believe this is not the right time, that it's a very, very close call, that there are a number of objective reasons why it's, as you just hinted a moment ago, never a good time to release this report. From the White House's perspective, what is the deciding factor that makes this the right time? Other than the political calendar, which suggests if Senate Republicans are in charge of the Intelligence Committee, this report will never see the light of day.
The fact is, Major, the right time will be determined by members of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. That is as it should be. It's their report, and they should make the decision about the appropriate time for releasing it.
The President is chiefly responsible for articulating and defending the security of this country, its embassies, and its personnel. He has to have an opinion on this. He can't be a simple, casual bystander, leaving it to the committee to decide entirely on its own, without any guidance, whether this is the best time.
Well, again, we have been, I don't want to leave you the impression that there hasn't been any guidance, right? There has been communication between the administration and the committee. Again, that is something that they have to decide, that the members of the committee have to decide for themselves. It is their report, and as you've reminded me on a number of occasions, despite the president's priority that he places on the safety and security of the United States of America, the legislative branch is...
I'm bored with him. There is, of course, something else that was going on during all of this, which was kind of pushed to the background, which we will get to when you wrap all this up. But obviously there was a $1.1 trillion spending bill with all kinds of little gotchas.
Oh, there's all kinds of crap in that thing.
Yes, and of course...
Campaign finance reform? What has that got to do with anything?
Yeah, federal land changes. I mean, there's a lot of things happening. And to me, it felt this was a major reason for the timing, is to get this done and not just get the spending bill done, but have the ability for all kinds of groovy little things to be put in there. I mean, really, really groovy stuff. I mean, we're going to invade Burma, just so you know. I mean, stuff that's in there is nuts.
Yeah, well, it was probably one of the many reasons. I think it was covering up a lot of stuff. I have another one that's kind of different. Meanwhile, even the Senate had a number of great speeches. John McCain's was outstanding.
I thought it was. I agree. And I'm no John McCain fan.
I know the show is not a John McCain.
Don
fan.
Also loved me. He said the speech of his career, and Don does not like John McCain.
Right. A lot of people don't, but everyone liked that
speech.
In
fact, who really likes John McCain? Raise your hand without talking.
Lindsey Graham, who comes up after John McCain and essentially condemns McCain's speech.
These guys are playing such a fun game.
I think that Graham is going to be in the doghouse with McCain for a while. And then, of course, my favorite one that came up, I actually like Jay Rockefeller's the best. Rockefeller had a great one. I'll bring it into the next show because he had an anecdote. A couple of anecdotes that were really good. And Patrick Leahy had a bunch of interesting anecdotes that I thought were funny. In fact, I'm going to skip to this one because he's talking about how he realized that there's the lying that was going on in front of the committee and in front of Congress, and it was getting on their nerves, which is one of the reasons they wanted to release
And Leahy is Democrat?
Yes, Leahy's a Democrat. Mm-hmm. And I don't think this was that politically motivated, even though everyone likes to think that. But this is my Leahy, who's hard to understand nowadays. And this is a long clip, but it's well worth it because this is right out of the House of Cards. This is a story that if you can use, like, again, Leahy's lost his voice, but This is the story about how Washington really works, and this is Leahy's story about the joggers.
It's very similar to what we had leading up to the war in Iraq after 9/11. I remember being in those hearings, Mr. President. I remember listening to the then Vice President. I remember listening to others in these secret hearings and thinking, it doesn't ring true. And I stated that I thought some of the things they were telling us didn't ring true. And I remember walking early one morning with my wife near our home, and two joggers coming up, calling us by name. People we'd never seen in the neighborhood.
Hey, asshole.
One of them said, I hear you have some questions. Have you asked to see report and names of particular report? I said, I hadn't. I didn't know there was such a thing. He said, you might find it interesting to read. I did. And then I raised even more questions about what I had read there, totally contradicted what the Vice President and others were saying. And I mentioned that to some. A few days later, we're out walking again, both joggers. My wife remembers this so well.
I'll bet.
They said, I see you read report such and such. I said, I did. But did they tell you about this other report? I said, I didn't know there was such one. You may find it interesting. And I got it. And it was obvious from that there was holding evidence that Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11, contrary to what the Vice President and others were saying. There were no weapons of mass destruction, that this did not prove to be a harmful nation to us. In fact, they were actually well penned in by the no-fly zone we had set up. But we rushed to war because we'll show them they did 9/11, even though they had nothing to do with 9/11. And now, almost $3 trillion later, look at the mess we're in.
Yeah, the thing that saddens me about all this is we are doing exactly the same right now. We are being lied to about just one small example: ISIS, ISIL, IS, who are going to get in their flying Toyotas and come over here and kill us all. We're being lied to with fake. I see no difference between these truly fake beheading videos. Beheadings happen. These videos are fake. They certainly don't show an actual beheading. That's no different from Colin Powell holding up a vial of anthrax or yellow cake or any of this stuff. So it is happening. We are being distracted from lies taking place yet again. And to me, I think I hold the American public. I think if we actually said, hey, you know what? This mofo, Saddam Hussein, he wants to ruin us by not using our petrodollar to trade in his oil. He wants to use the euro. We got to take him out. I think then the American people would be like, yeah. And it would be truth. And we'd be done with it. And maybe Saddam Hussein would have said, oh, crap, maybe I shouldn't do this. Why we think we have to lie to everybody? We've evolved a little bit, That's my feeling.
I think your feeling stems from
hope and change.
Something that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
The public at large, as you can see how easy people are fooled when you go to the store, you listen to have some people having a conversation, no agenda listeners, let's say.
Yep.
And they're just spewing the same memes that we're talking about here, back and forth and back and forth. And oh yeah, it worked. We caught bin Laden because of the torture, when there's absolutely zero evidence of that. And it was 10 years later and 3 or 4 years after the torture ended. It's like and by the way, the Feinstein report, which is what I'm going to call it, had gone extensively into the bull crap that we caught bin Laden based on torture, when in fact there's zero evidence of it. But yet, if you go and listen to these shows, it keeps coming up again and again and again. Hayden still says it, and they all keep saying it. And they're saying it a lot more than Feinstein, because who's going to read that report or the summary or listen to that one guy on Chris Hayes' show? The likelihood of catching that is zero. I mean, that's not a very popular show. And meanwhile, you listen to Hayden. I have a funny clip on Hayden on lying. You want to just drop that in?
Okay, hold on a second. I was just rereading Don's op-ed about torture. Remember I sent that to you like 2 months ago?
Yeah.
It's some interesting historic perspective in that. I'll put it in the show notes. What do I have here? Hayden.
Michael Hayden on lying.
Okay. Sorry. I was looking for just Hayden.
So when Dianne Feinstein today says you lied, is she lying?
I'll go so far as to say she's incorrect. I mean, lying is intentionally misleading someone. All right? And let me make another distinction. Telling people something they don't want to hear is not the same thing as telling people something that is untrue.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
What did he say?
I don't know what he said. These guys are all caught with their pants down.
Well, they're doing, I think, personally, I think they're doing it because they called out the troops. Big time. I've said in the newsletter, we have had this rare opportunity to spot the spooks.
Well, they're wearing revolving lights on their heads now. It's like spook, 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 spook. Yeah.
You can tell the ones who are the spooks, and it's so easy. They got this. They say the same things. They support. They didn't want the report. One of the things I said before is that the stupidity of this. They all say that one of the memes is, "Oh, well, none of this information is new. We already knew this.
Yeah.
We knew it. We knew it. We knew it."
Right.
So why? And then they'll say that in one breath, and then a few breaths later say, releasing this report is going to cost Americans lives. It's going to make... No, wait a minute. If everyone already knew this and it was public domain by argument, what difference does it make what you... To paraphrase Hillary, what difference does it make if you release this report? Because it's already known. How's it going to endanger anybody? And by the way, the idea of this report endangering you and me and everybody in the United States and even people overseas is nonsense. Nobody's endangered. Who's reading this stuff? I mean, it's only people that listen to our news media. This is all a huge smokescreen. The people that are putting it out there are not to be trusted ever.
Miki always does my kind of my field work. And she came home yesterday, and she's been out and about, and she's been listening to NPR, and she's very good at getting a feel. She says this country doesn't care. No, the Americans don't care if we tortured or not. I think this is just
the overlooked fact.
Yeah, we really, really don't care. What am I getting for Christmas, Mommy? These are the important things. People they do not care. This is all positioning.
Well, it's to prevent those international indictments.
Yes, that's part of it.
It's to cover stuff up.
No, so they can go on vacation. These are a bunch of guys who want to go on vacation.
Go on vacation to Wyoming. They've been there.
They want to go on vacation. This is really what it's all about.